and both in terms of inbound donations and in terms of what we're able to ship out. In terms of inbound, that's really starting to rebound, particularly as we reach toward year end and companies are starting to return to work, at least the people working in the labs, and realizing what they don't need, what they want off their books by the end of the year. And then in terms of shipments, typically we're doing about 16 shipments a year to various institutions. That means a 20-foot ocean-going container filled with up to 100 and, let's say 150 scientific instruments and equipment worth, gosh, up to like 90 or 100K, but the replacement value would be closer, like 3.5 times that. And that's sort of a rhetorical thing in that often the scientists wouldn't even be able to obtain that equipment at all, because either they don't have the resources or there's no manufacturing representation in the country that they're in. Gosh, Erin, you asked like 3 questions in one. So could you kind of like point me to where, if I'm getting at what you were asking?
No, I mean, I think that you are. That's interesting to hear about how it's kind of rebounding with especially lab work resuming. I'm wondering if other folks on this call have experienced some of the same issues or challenges with, especially with COVID. You want to talk about that? Crickets.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Laurel.
Go ahead, Alyssa.
Oh, it's okay. Go ahead. We have plenty of time, so.
So I'm an architect with Dyer Brown Associates. We do a lot of workplace and corporate interiors projects, and we're definitely seeing a change in the workplace due to COVID. As I'm sure, as we're all obviously meeting virtually here. So we're anticipating seeing a lot of furniture specifically being up for grabs, or, companies that are downsizing and don't need the furniture anymore, right? So I think barriers to reuse would just be, that the furniture itself is, maybe outdated or doesn't meet their needs anymore. So I think that get that kind of like working back up the pipeline that talks about like product design and design for disassembly is definitely something that that we're interested in. And I think cost too, oftentimes if it's more costly to reconfigure or repurpose or, logistically a huge heavy lift to have a third party kind of coordinate that, then sometimes it's cheaper for our clients to just buy new furniture and they don't care where it goes. So I think that that's another potential barrier, a place that MassDEP could help, is if there's an incentive or a disincentive to not reuse. I think that that's something that we would see our clients respond to.
Have you seen any example of that elsewhere that has worked, or?
So I know there's a furniture company, Technion, that has a program called Divert, and they basically offer for any, it doesn't have to be their furniture, it could be another manufacturer's furniture, but they offer that kind of third-party assistance of assessing the furniture that's in a space and finding a new home for it, whether it be usually with local nonprofits, I think is the goal. But there is a cost to that, and so I think it depends if the company or organization has a budget for it. But I know like that's one of the programs that I'm aware of that exists that has been successful.
Could you repeat the name, Laurel, of that organization?
Technion, Teknion, is a furniture company, and the program is called Divert.
Got it. And
they have a lot of information on their website that kind of talks about the process, and I think they also have some stats. I mean, they provide that's part of the service, is they provide to the client a report on exactly how they diverted the waste from landfill, how much of it went to another organization versus how much of it was resold or rebuilt.
That's really interesting to hear about it in that perspective, as that's a part of what we're doing with our lab equipment. Depending on the donor and the relationship that we have with corporation, we can report out on waste diversion. One of our major partners, we're coming up with a new way to track and actually by quarters give them the weight of the donations so that they can add that to their CSR metrics. And definitely that third party aspect of making the matches is not free. In terms of equipment, we are becoming kind of much more forward in communicating to potential donors. Is it at all possible that you could ship it to us or contribute towards offsetting the cost? But when there are situations when they cannot offer that help and it's a piece of equipment that's really in very high demand, then, you know, we obviously have a budget to cover that sort of stuff. But the more we can send to our awardees, the better, obviously.
Yeah, and I wonder, it's probably very specialized for you, Jennifer, with lab equipment. But I know with this Divert program, part of what they look at is, let's say that they find a new home for the furniture with a local nonprofit, and then 2 or 3 years down the road, now that nonprofit is moving or closing or doesn't need the furniture anymore. That's another opportunity that it might end up in the landfill, right? So I think that's also part of this program, is that they kind of check back in intermittently on a yearly or every 2 years basis to continue to kind of find a new home or try to continue diverting that waste or potential waste.
That's interesting to look down the road, and in fact makes me think of conversations that we've been having just in the last week with Eversource, which has been offering incentives for institutions and individuals, I guess, who are buying Energy Star compliant equipment. And specifically, they're looking at the ultra low temperature freezers, which are very much in the news right now with the distribution of the COVID vaccine. And the thinking with with the person that we're working with at Eversource is, FedEx is probably not going to need these hundreds and hundreds of freezers in 2 years. So what's going to happen to them then? So really like looking out and trying to get ahead of it. Did we lose Erin?
No.
There you are.
Alyssa, it sounded like you had something to add as well.
So it's kind of interesting because I guess I would be the third party that you're talking about, Laurel. So our business is based on the resale and remanufacturing of previously owned office furniture. So what we do is we go ahead and liquidate offices, bring the furniture back to our facility, then we remanufacture it, refurbish it, whatever we need to do to make it resellable, and then we resell the furniture. Anything that is not able to be fixed to resell, we do responsibly recycle to the best that we can. So we do see, right now, unfortunately, because a lot of places are either going out of business or choosing to do permanent remote working, there's definitely an influx of requests for us to liquidate. And I think the big thing that you hit the nail on the head on is cost. Because when we're, a lot of kind of a misconception, I guess, when it comes to these types of things is that we're just going to go into the office and we're just going to tear everything out for free and we're going to take it back to our facility and it's going to happen in 2 days. And it's, there's nothing that the starting company really has to do. And unfortunately, that's not the case because of the amount of labor involved. When right now we're actually in Massachusetts, liquidating a rather large office building, and we're going to be there for about 2.5 weeks in order to complete it. And it's taking about, 15 to 20 guys pretty much every single day, Monday through Friday, to do this in order to meet the 2-week deadline. So we're talking, that's 6 trucks, we're talking trailers, so it's very expensive as far as overhead goes with these jobs to bring the furniture back, to be able to reuse it, to resell it. So it's not something that can always be done at no cost, especially since there is varying types of furniture, the value of the furniture to begin with, things like that. So I think that's kind of part of not necessarily the problem, but a company has to plan for that. One is it could be a little bit more expensive to have someone come in and liquidate. You know, there are instances where the furniture is really valuable and we'll offset the cost of that. So, you know, there are times that it might be free for us to remove it, but it's not always going to work out that way. And then the other thing is time. So if we're taking this furniture apart because we're going to resell it, we have to be very careful. You know, we're not just going to come in there with sledgehammers, knocking everything down to throw it in a dumpster. So that's going to take a lot longer to complete. So it's not something that, you know, your lease is up December 31st, like we're not going to be able to get you out in time at this point. So there are a lot of factors that go into whether or not companies choose to go the route of liquidating or decommissioning their furniture instead of just unfortunately throwing it away.
Yeah, and we've heard that in the past, especially with school. We did a whole work group about school furniture reuse in the past, and it's just not on the radar during renovations and remodeling, and the timelines are just, by the time you start thinking about, oh, maybe we could repurpose this furniture, it's not getting someone that can actually get it somewhere to be reused is much more difficult.
Right.
But I guess it brings me back to the idea of incentives. Have you seen, maybe Laurel, you can speak to this, anything in like LEED building standards that talk about deconstruction that would be like related to this?
Yeah, I'm not positive. I can definitely get back to you on that, but I think like that's where I would say the greatest incentives are, and to what Jennifer mentioned too, like if a company, like if we have a larger corporate client that has a corporate social responsibility plan or, you know, is reporting on that information, then that's the kind of thing that it would be an incentive for. The other thing that kind of the other angle that I'm approaching this from that I'm interested in is the look at the consideration of embodied carbon. And a lot of times from an architecture perspective, you know, we think about the carbon that goes into our buildings through the construction materials, but because interiors are refreshed so often, that can actually lead to more embodied carbon impacts than the building itself over time. So, I think as we start to see the conversation around carbon impact and reducing our carbon footprints grow, I think we'll see more and more if there's a conversation about a carbon tax, or we'll start to see more incentives from that perspective to reduce waste, but it's not something that I'm aware of right now.
Okay. Ashley, I know that you've done some work on this at CT, so I'm going to call you out and see if you have some things to add to this conversation.
Yeah, I can. I might be pulling us a little more toward the residential furniture reuse, but where we deal with this through the Recycling Works program is with like multifamily properties and colleges and universities. And I would echo a lot of what I'm hearing. It's like there's sort of this path of least resistance is to just dispose of furniture and you know, the cost issue. So with like college move outs, certainly I think there's a very positive trend toward very sort of intentional move out programs where you know, schools are trying to recover as much furniture as possible, but the amount of waste and stuff that gets trashed is enormous. And it's like there's a big rush. People have, you know, 48 hours to move out of their dorm rooms and stuff just gets trashed. And then similarly, we provide technical assistance to a lot of like commercial sort of condo properties where when people are moving out sort of middle of the night, they'll just bring all kinds of furniture down to the dumpster. So it's like an opportunity to like transfer the responsibility to the property owner and, you know, not have to deal with the cost of and the sort of logistics of donating it. So a lot of the properties we deal with talk about having to bring in extra dumpsters every month just to deal with like the couches and the tables and the so forth that are thrown out. Some of them we provide them all with a lot of information about you know, service providers in the area that can either pick up donations or that you can deliver to. But I would say in that kind of sector, it seems like a lot of stuff is just disposed out of ease.
Victoria, maybe I can call on you to give the municipal perspective of a city with many colleges around that.
So we have Public Works that also is part of the zero waste team, and historically they've been the department that's managed move in, move out, and so they have a lot more historical knowledge than I do. But I mean, it's, yeah, echoing what was just said, it is a real struggle, and I would say it's something that since we have the zero waste plan, and we're going to be focusing more strategically on ICI moving forward, and particularly like me, Susan, Laura, our side of things, that's one of the spaces we want to look at, and thinking about how we can not only support the start supporting more of the reuse businesses that do exist in the city, but what other outlets can either the city strategic, like ourselves, support and have, or, you know, need to start developing. So that's why we're all kind of sprinkled out in these different spaces to think about it. But yeah, I think right now it's still at a managing point. And I think anytime we get to a point where we're like, let's take a little action to change, there's some hesitation, but hopefully that will start changing with more momentum that we're building because we have the plan. So.
I'm curious, I know at one point I asked like a bunch of questions at the same time, but from all of your experiences, are there certain equipment or furniture that are harder to move, that you've been having a hard time, either because it's inbound and you just can't resell it, in your case, like Alyssa, or if it's the other way, it's like outbound, like you're trying to help people get rid of it and you just can't find anyone who will take it?
I mean, the hardest thing for us to just get rid of on any end is wood furniture. So it's really not something that is as popular right now. So, you know, sale of it is not, you know, super fast, especially with everyone doing their home offices. A lot of people just don't have room to put these massive wood desks in their offices. And on the flip side of that, for us to actually dispose of it in a responsible way where it can get repurposed, there's a company we work with, and they like kind of grind it all down and then they repurpose it into something else, which is great, except that that service costs us money by, you know, the weight of it. So we do that in order to, you know, responsibly get rid of these items if they are not selling or they're so damaged that it's just like, you know, it's not anything anyone would purchase. Those items are hard to donate because they're super heavy. So, you know, who's taking them, how are they getting there? It's just a complicated process. So I would say there's definitely wood is the most challenging for us when it comes to moving it and responsibly getting rid of it if it's not moving. So
That's interesting, because I would have thought it'd be not real wood, it would be like the particle board type. Like I know that in the household furniture, the rising use of particle board furniture, that stuff's just like crap once it like is used. But do you have that? I mean, is that in the same thing, like Sharon or Jackie, do you have that same experience, or even Richard, in the household? Like, is it wood furniture is not moving?
The real wood furniture we find, so we give it away for free, furniture, that we find that the solid wood furniture is the most popular, but we can't take the oversized, super heavy items, and we only take things that can be used in a home. So we get a lot of calls about office furniture, and that's something that, you know, we have very few places to refer people to. But, you know, if it's small, you know, the office furniture like the end tables and the waiting room items, we love to get because it's usually really durable and people like it. I think, you know, we take a lot of the dorm furniture, and we work with Boston College for the student move out. But I think, you know, one of the challenges with the colleges is that they all renovate at the same time. And so, you know, we'll get an offer for, you know, 2,000 rooms, you know, in the same couple of months. And we can probably do, you know, maybe 500. So it's sort of the timing of all of that, because it's always, you know, it's all in the spring. It's, you know, and it's just challenging the vol. It's, you know, feast or famine.
I would echo it. That's our experience too. You either have to take in such quantity that you can't turn it over quick enough, or you get multiple offers at once, and then there'll be nothing for months and months and months. So you're making other plans. Like we took dorm rooms from Amherst, and we're still giving it out. We took that in August. So.
It's interesting. I feel like that's like the opposite of, yeah, maybe what Alyssa, like it might be nice to have matching large sets for what you're doing, but then in the household world, getting getting rid of that large amount is not, for reuse is not as easy. Other people have experience with, it sounds like some of the barriers we've heard so far are definitely timing, just things not, you know, like the supply and demand not being at the right time, or too much supply at one time, or not enough demand at like one time. Are there other barriers that folks have experienced?
Style. So for us up at the Restore, everybody who wants to get rid of the big old hutch that fit the square TV that now don't, and nobody knows what to do, or if you're not creative, how to repurpose. So sometimes taking it in, it might be in great condition, but it's just not something that anybody wants or uses anymore. So then what do you do with it? And people get offended when you don't take it from them.
Yeah.
Because they all think it's beautiful and you should want it, and you know, they want to feel good, and try to explain to them that it's not just something that you have a use for.
Maybe we can talk a little bit then about, I mean, I think style is definitely an important thing and something that has been echoed a couple of times, about remanufacturing or remodeling, you know, upholstering to make things, I don't know, fit with as much as you can with current trends. I mean, that kind of goes to Laurel's point about how some of the embedded carbon is probably in the constant refreshing of the inside of office spaces or homes. So
for us, it's not so much style, because we find that there's somebody who likes everything, you know, things that I might just think is like perfectly awful, somebody will just fall in love with, but it's the condition, you know, especially for the upholstered, if it's stained or there's little holes in it, you know, that's something that we just can't use, and usually we don't have the resources to repair it. So it's really the condition of some of the older items.
For New Life, we started repairing upholstered items. Like if they had a small hole, we had a very creative seamstress that made it look, you know, like it was like, she fixed it in a way that made it look like it was part of the chair. But I would say that for us, all of that stopped because of COVID. Like we've got so much stuff coming in that anything that was on the edge of New Life has kind of just stopped. So like we don't really repair furniture anymore. We don't clean furniture. We don't repair. It's the same as what we were talking about before. The path of least resistance. Like for us, it's easier just to get rid of it because we know that a ton more is going to come in over the weekend, which is a sad situation, but it's the reality of dedicating space to repair when we're just getting too much. And it's not that we don't have demand on the other side, it's because everything is virtual. We just can't see enough clients through the system because of constraints on space.
I would also add another concern that we think about a lot is the chemicals of concern that may be a part of materials. So I think for older, you know, furniture, whether it's upholstered, maybe there are flame retardants or, you know, sometimes with laminates like formaldehyde and chemicals like that we wouldn't put in if we were putting in new furniture, but it's already in the old furniture. So then you run into the question, like, do we want to donate this to a nonprofit where they're going to be exposed to it? What's the right answer?
I would piggyback on that and say absolutely, because when we are vetting equipment, well, first we need to be sure that it's going to be of use to our to the end users and the awardees. But we have forms and agreements, and so basically the donor is vouching for the fact that the equipment has been decontaminated, and we will only accept equipment that is in working order because we don't have the resources to be fixing stuff. Basically, we're having everything delivered to our warehouse in Bridgewater, Massachusetts. And from there, our third-party logistics, they do warehousing, they'll put together the shipments once our awardees have picked the equipment that they want. And so it's really like, there's no way that we would want non-working equipment. Number one, we can't repair it. Number two, it would be of no use to our awardees. And why would we ship it across an ocean if it's not working?
Yeah, I think that you, I heard a couple different themes come up here. One, I wanted to kind of call out more that Richard just pulled out about space constraints. And I know that you kind of just talked about that too in warehouse. And that's kind of also part of the barrier to being able to maybe refurnish or repurpose or fix minor issues with some technology or some furniture. Are other folks having that same thing? I know Meredith has come up with a great solution working with Fresh Start and Washington's Earth Day to help with that on the more of the household size, but.
Yeah, I think we at Wachusett primarily get residential furniture in. And while it feels like a lot to us, I realize we're not doing whole building cleanouts like the rest of you. But space is always a challenge. And not just to store the items, but to have them displayed in such a way that people can look at them and figure out if they want them. One of the things we've recently started to do, because we have a few really creative upcycling people in the area, is now I will, if a table's badly scratched, if I can get the legs off it, I'll take the legs off and save those legs for someone else to reuse in a project. Or, they've taken some chairs that were really in horrible shape, but had a beautiful arm to them or something. So they're actually salvaging the bits and parts of them. And that's saving something for us. But again, it's storage of those items for them. With my box, we're taking most of our furniture, and if we think it's good enough to be passed on to a furniture bank, we're storing it in a My Box, and then they move it for us when it's full, leave it at Fresh Start until it can be emptied, and then bring it back to us empty, and we start all over again. So the process is going really well there. There's a challenge in the coordination of when the box is full, and can Fresh Start accept it, because they too are having challenges in getting clients through, and the demand meeting, the stock that you have. Even though we're a much smaller scale than a lot of you, it seems like we have similar issues, is how much can you hold on to? And do you really have what people need when they need it? We have so many twin beds right now. And I know at some point people are going to be looking for them, but how long can I save them?
Norma, we would take the twin beds at Household Goods.
We will. How can we get that to you? maybe we'll work out the My Box shipment out to you then. Part of the challenge is, and Jackie can speak to this too, because Jackie checks out all the stuff before we send it to them, is kind of matching all the parts back up and labeling it and getting it out there. But I would love to talk to you about the furniture that we just are sitting on that I really don't want to just trash.
Yeah, let's connect after.
I'd also be interested in hearing about the company that someone said they can send wooden furniture to be ground up and used in some manner. Because right now it goes in a dumpster. If we can't do anything with it, if it's too damaged or it's just been sitting too long.
That was me. I don't know the name of the company, but I can certainly find out from the operations director who we
That would
sent
be
this
great.
to. Generally speaking, we'll fill up a trailer just because it's easier on our end. I don't know, like logistically, smaller amounts how that works. But I know that it is kind of at least a nicer way where they can repurpose whatever that wood gets ground into turn into something else. So.
I'm thinking that maybe Recycling Works directory might have, Ashley, maybe some other options as well if that, if the contact that Alyssa uses a transfer enterprise doesn't work for the quantity that you have, Norma.
I know Raw Material Recovery Corporation in Gardner will take wood furniture and they have a chipper. So there's clean wood.
Yeah, we work with them. We work with them for a lot of our electronics. And the mattresses too. I think they take all our mattresses to recycle.
Yeah, they do that. But they do take furniture. So it might, ask how much more.
For reuse or for grinding up?
No, for recycling, for grinding.
I think that maybe, I wanted to kind of draw on something that Laurel said a little bit more in here, what other folks, I mean, I know that Jennifer spoke to decontaminating the equipment. What are people doing with the furniture that might have toxic chemicals? I know, Alyssa, you guys have like a very robust remanufacturing, repairing workshop. Is that a concern? Is there certain things that you won't touch because of flame retardants or whatever it is, formaldehyde in the furniture?
Yeah, so we are really careful as far as what we take in and what we use. So again, so we're reselling this furniture. So we are looking for furniture that we will make a profit off of eventually. So a lot of this older stuff that, has these concerns isn't really something that we would want to take in. To be something that would need to get taken apart and disposed of most likely anyway. And the process of that can be pretty complicated. So that is something that we have to be careful of. And then as far as, additional concerns that have come up as well is like the cleaning and sanitation of furniture just in general, especially with COVID going on, and like what that looks like, especially because we are reselling it. So, the end user wants to make sure that everything is okay. And then how do we check all of the furniture when it was manufactured, what the certifications were, how we cleaned it. So it is kind of a lot of a process, to be honest with you. So we try to stick with certain manufacturers just for the reason being that that information is usually a little bit easier to find, instead of, having to just search through the bowels of the internet, to be quite honest with you. And it's just easier that way. But we do have concerns when it comes to older stuff, especially what was used. I know there was some concerns at one point with a really old painted piece that we got that probably had lead paint, and what we would do with that and things like that. So, and again, that's not so much my department. That's more operations, but they do kind of have to sift through and be really careful, especially because we don't want our guys to be exposed to it either. So a lot of times these buildings are empty, but then we're sending our teams in and we don't always know 100% what's in there, or especially now with COVID, we can't go and visit like we used to. So we used to have a team that flew out around the country, that would go look at these things ahead of time. Now everything's on video call. So we don't always know what we're going to come into. So that is kind of, I guess, a back end concern that we don't always talk about a lot, but yeah, safety for sure.
Yeah, it's not like there's like a super easy label that says I contain formaldehyde in this
exactly
product.
And unfortunately, because there's so many replicas, especially for older furniture, it's not always, we got to authenticate it, then we got to make sure what year it was made. The same company will make the same piece of furniture for 15 years pretty much. So where did this one fall in line? Did people keep the original manufacturing stickers? Did they buy it from someone else, or were they even the original purchaser? I mean, the list can get quite long. So it's a tedious process at times, and then we just have to kind of make the final decision. Is it worth it? Is it not worth it? Sometimes unfortunately, that's just the way it goes.
Anyone else have experience with that aspect or concerns about that aspect? Maybe we can move on to I don't know, Siri's talking to me, so she didn't understand what I said either.
Interesting question.
And she just said it was an interesting question. My watch sometimes just goes off. Thank you, Siri. I guess I would maybe like to shift to more of an uplifting component of what are some innovative solutions, or what are some things that you have seen that give you hope, or that we could replicate or scale. You know, start talking about like we see there's some pretty large logistical barriers to reuse of this material, but how could we help?
So there's this a Finnish furniture company. I haven't seen any companies in the U.S. doing this, but basically what they do is there's an RFID tag on all the furniture that they produce. And we've been thinking about this a lot. Like, is there a way that we could kind of retroactively like tag furniture or equipment within a space, like within an architectural space? Because we work in a lot of large, you know, buildings where there's a ton of offices, and, you know, we know in advance when someone's lease is going to end. So if we had a catalog of, you know, this is how many cabinets, or, you know, all the furniture that's in their space, for instance, then that could potentially alleviate some of that like need to warehouse material for a while you're waiting to find a home for it. Like if you knew in advance that there was going to be, you know, that this dorm move out is happening, and you could kind of plan in advance for where that furniture or equipment could go before it's even actually available. That's one thing I think is very interesting, and again, an opportunity, not one that I've seen in the US yet, but I think it's been done, so it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's something that the wholesalers do. So like the network of pre-owned furniture wholesalers will go in and like put in an inventory for a building that we're going to be liquidating. So like the one I talked about, we're doing in Massachusetts, that's been on the books for a month now. So we kind of knew what we were going to be getting. So we will put feelers out there if there's furniture that we don't necessarily want to have ourselves, to other, you know, wholesale furniture companies and resellers, that they will purchase it from us. It just gets tricky to do it too far in advance, because we've run into issues, to be quite honest, where, you know, companies will say we're going to have these 500 chairs, and then we get there and there's only 200, and now we promised, you know, XYZ to someone in California, and they're no longer there because people took the chairs home, or something got damaged, or something gets pushed back, or they change their mind. The new lease person and whoever's renting now decided to buy the furniture from the old tenant, things like that. So it can get complicated to do it like too far in advance. It's a great system when it works. It's just, there's just extra complications that kind of go along with it, but it would be great if companies did start, if they kind of kept inventory lists too, because I think that would just make everyone's job easier in general. You know, if they want to donate it instead of having us liquidate it, having that list would be great, you know, for the nonprofits to work with and things like that. So it's a great idea. It can just get a little complicated just from experience.
Anyone else have some innovative solutions or ideas that they want to share? Thanks, Jennifer. I see that you're about to sign off. Appreciate you coming and participating.
Well, I just wanted to thank you, Erin, for mentioning us and for kind of trying to bridge some of the gaps. I think my box can be great for timing issues as well. So if there is a cleanout, we've definitely done that in the past for companies that are liquidating their equipment and they need a place temporarily to store it. So they'll load it right into the box. We've been storing it for them at a deeply discounted price, and then we're hanging on to it until they can find a new home. So certainly, you know, keep us in mind for those kinds of jobs, because it can be a good solution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I know that was definitely a conversation with our school groups with renovating and remodeling, was that timing piece. I think the challenge was getting everybody who was involved in the process to be thinking a little bit more proactively. So that it wasn't like a last minute, oh, we'll just put it in the dumpster idea.
That's not like an implemented solution, but when we were having some initial conversations last year about move in, move out, one area that we were trying to think about is either like utilizing or building out and thinking about like the digital spaces like Facebook buy and sell, and those areas where, I mean, especially younger millennials feel like, especially college students, the effort of having to like go and donate something or go like that type of thing. So we were thinking about what digital platforms, and I guess once upon a time it never actually ended up happening, but from the inside the city, thinking about more procurement side, we started building out an inventory of city supplies, I think mostly within the schools, and transferring furniture and things like that. So but yeah, that was one space, and I personally use buy and sell pretty frequently, and so then it's just another space. So
yeah, I know that Mike Orr has talked about that at City of Cambridge as well frequently, that they have such little space in their public works yard that they've been really trying to push the buy nothing groups and the Facebook groups and Free Cycle and that for more of an individual like matchmaking of materials. And I feel like you've used that before too, Norma, like if you can't find something or find a new home within your center, that you will look to online.
Oh, we definitely post quite a bit on Facebook, because things like the furniture, I'd say 99.9% of the time, it's free. We just want it to go to a home instead of into a dumpster. So we'll post a lot of what we have, whether it's a volume or, right now we have a beautiful all wood sleigh bed and a giant bureau, and it's been there for over a month because it's just too huge for people to take when they come to the site, unless they come prepared to get that. So things like that we'll advertise more heavily. We'll let people from other towns come and take it, not just our 7-member towns, because we really just want to find a place to put it. So we use Facebook pretty heavily for that. And it does work for us. We can make an appointment off hours for people to come get it. We work with a lot of the refugee organizations to try to help them out with things that they need. We really just at different points, we just kind of put it out there to everybody saying, who do you know, who can help, who needs this stuff, and try to continue to push it out there.
Yeah, it does seem like with all of our technology, we would be able to, I don't know, come up with an easier way, like that. A lot of this is like right place, right time, right people with the right stuff. And it's like matchmaking just on a very large scale. And it seems with, the Internet of Things and just how much technology we have, this would be a little easier than it is right now, but.
Right, and I guess it's kind of been a little dream I've had, especially as there's all this discussion about workplaces changing, even, months from now, and people feel safer. Is everyone going to go back into these big office buildings or not, or to the malls that are sitting empty? And I keep hoping that some of these spaces will be possibly available for storage. If we all had a place stuff could go until it was needed, wouldn't that be great? Because that seems to be storage and transportation beyond a certain number of miles seems to be an issue that we all have. And, we definitely in Worcester area, we have a lot of empty buildings sitting here, big buildings with loading docks that have nothing going on there. And I keep wondering, like, why can't we use those? Sure, there's a lot involved, but it's a hope.
Kelly? Yeah.
This is totally anecdotal, but I am actually moving, so I am in the process of what you all are describing, and I had enough lead time, right? So I got on my Free Cycle, my Buy Nothing group, my Nextdoor, and it was time consuming. I had to take pictures, write up the thing. People didn't show up on time, and my goal was to really have the least amount to go to, you know, my Goodwill at the end, but anybody else would have just dropped it off at Goodwill. It would have been 100 times easier, you know, and I'm really like personally struggling because I wanted to support my community. I wanted it to go to people. And anyway, yeah, I don't think there can be, yeah, you know, and not everyone's going to do it.
Yeah, I was thinking about too, like, it's almost, I mean, certainly for a lot of people, like, there's no concern at all about taking something used, but I think there's also kind of like can be like a stigma around it. And so I think like making that cultural shift to make it more appealing to like reuse, and, you know, I think that's a whole nother conversation, but I'm thinking of a program that uses what's called social capital credits, and by doing tasks that benefit the community, in this case it could be recycling or, you know, donating or spending that time to like find a new home for your furniture instead of sending it to Goodwill, that can be redeemed for these social capital credits, and those credits could be used for things that, you know, municipal services, or you know, they could be used for various things within the community, like local businesses could agree to accept them as currency, for instance. So, I mean, that's like a much bigger kind of structural thing, but I'm just thinking, like, if you were, like Victoria just mentioned about millennials are using Facebook, like if it was a game and you could get points, right, and do something, like get something tangible with those points, then that would incentivize people to, you know, to reuse, or to make that extra effort to like take the photos and post them and coordinate to the pickup and all of that.
I'm gonna jump in. Hi, I have not spoken up before. This is Susan Waite calling from Northampton Department of Public Works. I want to piggyback on something that was said, two things. First of all, I agree, online, giving away things online is a lot of work. It's a real bear, and the people that I know that do it don't work full time, and it's fun for them, and it's just really not very practical. So it really, really helps to have a site that things can be collected at, and people can come and take away what they want. And so also piggybacking on what Norma said, if we can have, you know, so I'm thinking innovation. If communities could have a location, a warehouse, something where things could be accumulated, you could have a dumpster nearby so that things could go into the dumpster if they're in bad condition, or it can get recycled, whatever. Charge people a small amount per item to pay some of the operating costs, and have a display space and storage space for people to come by and take things. And if DEP could help fund something like that, I mean, it would be a really great experimental thing. If each community had a place like that, once they exist, word gets out, and it's a go-to place. People don't always want to throw stuff away. I mean, some people are in a hurry and they throw it at the dumpster, but people know that things are durable and still have life in them. They want to do the right thing. They just don't know where to take it. The Salvation Army, I've spoken with the folks in Springfield down here. It takes so many of their resources to pick up furniture, and they still try to do it because people expect it of them, and they want their reputation to continue, and they want people to feel comfortable donating to them. But those large items are really hard to move distance. Mm-hmm. And so if each community had some kind of a collection spot that where these things could be accumulated, working with volunteers works. You know, you can do it at a relatively low cost, but it needs to be there. And we in Northampton would love to do something like that, but we just don't have the building space, nor do we have finances to rent a place. So that's my idea. I just think if we could somehow develop a model for communities of any size to have collection centers that could give material away. You could even charge a small amount, you know, like charge $10 per items to help cover costs. Because if it's great stuff, you know, and as far as people changing the way people feel about used furniture, it's built better. Most of the chemicals have been outgassed by the time that it comes, you know. I mean, if it's been in somebody's house for 10 or 15 years, you don't have to worry so much about the formaldehyde, you know. It's been taken care of. So there are lots of really positive things about it. We just have to make it accessible and affordable for people. I'm going to shut up now.
I think 2 quick points on that. I think about having a centralized place is also about like supply, like, you know, people that are taking on these materials further down, the more collection you have, the more supply you have to give. And one-off things are much more harder to like aggregate to do something with versus like if you were able to have a consistent space. And then I think another just big thing about the culture of reuse, especially around furniture and stuff, is about like assurance. Like I think a lot of people like to buy new because they know what they're getting, or like they're buying online because they know exactly what it is. I think one of the fun things about like going to the Restore or something is you're kind of like, you're thrifting, but you're also like whatever else. But that's not always somebody's like their thing or what they want. They want to spend their day knowing exactly what they're getting. And I think that's where spaces like Facebook Buy and Sell or these online platforms sometimes are like, okay, I know I'm going to go and this is what I'm getting. I mean, with a certain degree of like, someone may hide a scratch or whatever else. And I think that there are different spaces with different affordances. Like it's interesting to hear people have certain struggles. I know I'm talking more from like a residential individual level, but like I helped my brother move out of Florida. We put all his big furniture out, and within 24 hours, we had like moved a gigantic wooden desk, chairs, tables. And it was interesting also to see talk to the people who were asking for these items. They're often people that were just moving to the city or in certain situations. And so I think it's also thinking about who, like we could certainly supply these items to. But the biggest point I want to get across is like, I think part of it's also assurance of what you're getting, and like that certainty and ease. Because not everyone wants to like walk around the Restore like I do all day and figure out what's happening.
Well, I can definitely speak to that as well too. So I'm the store manager of Restore down here in Westfield. I think one of the big things too that goes to it, you really don't know the quality. So we do our best to really make sure that it's going to be a good piece. Nothing's ripped or broken or anything like that. And those pieces can kind of go to the people that want to refurbish and refinish pieces. Those people are kind of far and few between now. And then those items also take up a lot of space. Just to be able to get the stuff back into the community is a little bit hard as well too. There's some type of a saturation point when it comes to furniture, big pieces. I mean, if you got a 4-bedroom house, you're probably only going to have 4 dressers in your home at a time. So depending on exactly what can happen with that, it's pretty difficult to move the stuff around. And then we have some really nice stuff that's almost brand new. We've got that stuff that really needs to be refurbished. And then it's a question of space versus cost. Keep the lights on and keep operating costs going at the same time. It'd be great for us to be able to just, everything's $10 to get it out the door or something for a community aspect, but then driving people to come here to find it is still one of those big things. I think I still get at least 5 or 6 people per week that are like, oh, I didn't even know you guys were here. And it's just like, yep, tell everybody you can, try to figure it out and come down this way. I mean, my biggest question is then what else can we do to keep some of this stuff out of a landfill that the population has determined that it's not a quality that they want to purchase or they want to repurpose or anything along those lines. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff that we end up throwing out at the end of the day once it's spent 3-4 months on our floor and people have just really chose that they don't want it anymore.
I don't have an answer to that. So anyone else have thoughts? I mean, I think that we've hit on a number of really, logistical it is matchmaking, and it is the quality of the material in some cases. Jackie?
Yeah, he brought up a good point. I'm always surprised when I hear that in our town, in Hudson, we have a furniture bank. How much more do you need to publicize that we're right down the street? I
think you may have cut out for a second. We lose you, Jackie? Did anyone else lose her?
I lost her.
Yeah, she's like,
what else can you do? You know, newspaper articles, online, social media. It's quite amazing the number of people that say, I've never heard of Restore. I've never heard of household goods. I've never heard of, you know, what are we doing wrong? Anybody?
I mean, I think that's a great conversation in general. Like, I mean, we've talked about one of the issues with moving institutional and commercial furniture is the not thinking of it until last minute and maybe not knowing the vendors that can take it. And I think that's the same on the household level, that, you know, you might not know what to do with certain materials, or even that anybody else would want those certain materials, or where to go, you know, that you have the option to get those things secondhand rather than buying off of Amazon or whatever. Do people have ideas or have had solutions to getting the word out, or like messaging that seems to really resonate with people, that kind of get past that cultural thing of like, reuse is really cool, you should do this?
Well, the one thing I've noticed is this Facebook next door trash nothing. You put it on one site and you get nothing. You put it the next day on Facebook, boom, it's gone. So it's different people are on multiple different sites or only one site, and you hit them just right. And like you said, it's time consuming. And I'm like, oh, great, you take the picture once, it's on your phone, then you can dump it on all these other sites. But it is amazing to me. I wish there was a way to consolidate that into one site, but it's not going to happen with Facebook, you know, or you know, it all depends on where they're looking and at what time and what's going on. But it is always surprising how quickly one group will grab something as opposed to another. So,
Erin, I joined a little late, but I'm wondering if you have any statistics about the increase of off-cast furniture with the aging of the baby boomer generation. I think intuitively there's going to be a flood of material as people age and start scaling back. So I think we're probably at the start of a flood. So I'm curious what...
I've never looked at it in that way, but I mean, we do have our regular waste characterization studies, and furniture is one of the breakouts on that. So we could see if there, I mean, I don't know that we could concretely say that that is, you know, why there would be an increase. I know that that's why we chose this as a topic to focus on with the Reduce and Reuse Working Group, is because it is a pretty significant portion of our waste stream, and something that, I mean, as we all know, has value. At least a lot of this material has value, and it's just how do we break through some of these barriers and increase more reuse of it. But yeah, we could look at it, dive into the numbers a little bit and see if there's that trend.
One of the
but
things
certainly,
Sharon? No, I didn't. Go ahead.
You're good.
One of the things that we're actually concerned about is the opposite, because the older furniture tends to be more durable and it lasts longer. And, you know, one of the things that we've talked about is, as younger people are buying more of the particle board and the furniture that's really not made to last, that's what will be our pipeline for furniture in the future. Because, you know, IKEA is great, but you take it apart, you know, twice and you just can't put it back together again. So we're sort of a little bit concerned about, you know, the future of the furniture manufacturing and how disposable everything's becoming.
Yeah. Have you seen that, Laurel or Alyssa, in more of like a institutional setting, that the quality of what people are putting in their offices or commercial spaces is decreasing? Or is that only like we're cheap consumers that want particle board?
Yeah. Well, I think, yeah, like if you're ordering from Amazon or Wayfair, sorry, I know that they're Boston local, but a lot of times, if you're ordering kind of, you don't probably made in China kind of cheap furniture, yes, but I would say for commercial, like, the big manufacturers that we work with that we specify on corporate projects, I would say that whole like designed obsolescence thing is kind of on the opposite side of the pendulum swing now. Like I think people are realizing that durability and, disassembly and reuse and, reducing waste is a priority, and companies are using that as, a marketing and a selling point for their products. I would say that's more so the case now, but definitely, I know for certainly a lot of consumer goods that still is the case. It's just not durable, and the parts aren't easy to replace, not easy to repair or refurbish, and not really much benefit to repairing and refurbishing, as opposed to older like handmade furniture and older furniture that was sturdy and kind of meant to like stand the test of time. Definitely.
Well, I'm promised to hear that you see that shifting at least a little bit in your world. So, Alyssa?
Yeah, I definitely think that the higher end commercial office furniture manufacturers are focusing on using sustainable products. And that's definitely part of a lot of their marketing. We're especially seeing it, I see it a lot in chairs. They're really advertising, what type of recycled plastics, things like that are used in the build of these newer models. That's part of their revamping of some of these models. I do think that a lot of commercial businesses will end up spending a little bit more money to get something that's a little bit more durable. I do agree with Laurel on that, because they see the value of keeping it for longer. The other thing is, pre-COVID, we saw a lot happening with more modular furniture. So we were moving away from those traditional huge cubicles and going more to open style benching systems, which because of that, there's less pieces involved. You can repair them a little bit differently. So I don't think that I don't see a huge concern with, cheaper products being put into the commercial office space necessarily. But that doesn't mean that, there's always going to be someone that does. But overall, we're seeing durable products stay in the offices.
That's good. Maybe we just need to see that shift among general consumers then too. But we will pay, it's hard paying a little bit more for durability and not really, we've talked about this in previous meetings, like a label for durability or a label for repairability would help consumers know what they're, because we use price as a signal, and price doesn't always actually signal these things.
Do you think part of the conversation is also like the longevity of people staying? I think that moving, like college students, I think often are looking at like it's just for 1 year, and there is this thought behind it. Like, I don't want to invest in like a super nice couch if I'm just going to want to toss it at the end. And I think that's also part about like, the culture of just extending the life of something, or even like people who are imagining like starting their career in a city and then, possibly moving on to grad school or moving out, how long they're investing in that piece of furniture. They're not looking for like their cornerstone pieces for their house for the rest of their life. They're looking for something for 3 to 5 years. And I think that is part of this conversation too. And like, extending the life of a piece that is, that has good bones to it, can be just as economical and or even more advantageous than buying something that's lesser quality and new. So when talking about the shifting of the culture conversation, I think that's also part of it.
This is Kelly. Victoria's comments really made me think of like some leasing models. I know some of businesses went to that for like the Xerox copy machines and stuff, but like, I wonder if that's a thing for young people.
I mean, I could see that with college move in and move out. Like if you had a off-campus apartment that was already furnished that just kind of got transitioned from, you know, each year rather than each group of students trying to find their new furniture and getting rid of it and finding it again and then getting rid of it.
Yes, yes.
I don't know how you I mean, I know that exists, like some leasing option like exists, but it's normally more expensive, and so people
right. But I wonder if you, it's like matchmaking, but part-time matchmaking, and you know, maybe you could still pick your, you know, decor a little bit, but I don't know. It just the comments made me think of that. I think it's always an option for waste prevention in any kind of product.
Erin, I have another question. This is Susan. Some years ago, probably 5 or 7 years ago, at a conference, a state conference, there was an organization in the Boston area that had developed a heating tank, sort of, or a heating storage unit out of a tractor trailer, where they would heat upholstered items up to 125 degrees and keep them there for 4 hours to kill any kind of vermin. I'm thinking about college students and sofas and mattresses, and how we might maybe provide assurances to people that it's safe to use these things. I mean, some college students are really off-put by the thought of a used mattress, even though they just need it for a few months. But if they were guaranteed, or at least given some level of assurance that there wasn't bed bugs in the mattress, they might not have the same issue. So I'm curious if that organization is still operating, and if you know anything about it.
I'm gonna give Rachel that one. She's our mattress expert, so she probably knows.
I don't know the specific company you're referring to, but I know many of the mattress vendors, many of the furniture banks, like the Wish Project in Lowell, they have a heat treatment truck. Like they have it, and they do that. And I don't know about some of the other places here, but yeah, I mean, I think that's something to invest in. If possible.
Seems like such a brilliant idea to take an old tractor trailer and hook a heater up to it, and you know, it just seems brilliant.
I think, Erin, we may have helped fund UTech to get one of those.
Felt like I remember hearing something about it, but I don't remember which group it was. I think it's funny because we just got rid of mattress. We gave it away for reuse, but it was one that we got off Craigslist in college. So we had no problems with that, I guess. Yeah, that does mean it was a very old mattress.
Yeah, I have noticed that the Savers is starting to put a red tag on all their upholstered furniture that says it's safe to reuse, do not remove this label. I haven't been able to find anyone that can tell me what they're doing. It's probably a spray of some kind, but I was curious.
There's a chemical process that they do or something. Maybe Rachel knows this, but I was told by Salvation Army that they spray things. So I think there's like heating versus spray.
Okay.
Yeah, there's like a couple different there's a couple different options. There is a spray option. I think it's I don't know, it's carbon something, and it kills things. But
Okay.
I think it's
no.
more
I just noticed that. You know, that is one thing that's different lately.
I have the information somewhere.
So I guess that kind of brings back to this idea of labeling, or like having some sort of like signal to consumers or the person who's going to be the secondhand user about what they're getting and the quality and what's in it. And but if there's other roles that, this kind of brings up, I don't know what control MassDEP has on labeling a bunch of reused things across the state, but at that scale. But if there are other things that you could think of that you could see MassDEP playing, I know we've had a couple ideas thrown out, but would love to hear them.
Well, I wonder, can Sharon, would you mind sharing with us how Household Goods shares what they do with their used mattresses? Because you do.
Yeah, so we do, when we get mattresses and box springs, before we take them, we do a visual inspection on them, and we remove all of the dust covers on the back of the box springs so we can look inside. The sprays are great as long as you hit the bugs. And so if you're spraying the surface of the couch, but the bugs are living underneath, it doesn't help. So we also, for our upholstered furniture, we take off the cushions and we vacuum everything, and that solves two things. One, it gets rid of any, whatever happens to be in the couch. And also it gives our volunteers a chance to be up close and personal, so they can look for any evidence of any infestation. And then as our last resort, we have a dog who's trained to sniff for bed bugs, so the dog goes through. But to be honest with you, mold, mildew, rat infestation, mouse poop, those are the things that are more prevalent for us than, the bed bugs. So I think it's sort of like looking at, not getting so caught up on bed bugs, which is, obviously on people's minds, the first thing when you think of used furniture, that's what you think. But there's so many other things that can be wrong with the furniture that, a really good visual inspection is really necessary. Stains.
And you said you take the back off the spring. Do you replace it with something, or you just leave it off?
We leave it off.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just made for dust. I mean, a lot of them are really dusty anyway. And that way, we're telling people we took it off because we wanted to look inside of it.
Good point. Okay, thank you.
Well, I really like this idea of a dog that can sniff. That's awesome. I had not heard of that before.
Everyone needs a mascot. We all need mascots.
I saw that Rachel added a whole bunch of information about bed bugs, so thank you, into the chat. And then Laurel had a good idea about labels or flyers that go out in the mail to help connect people to the reuse organizations. That kind of gets back to what we're talking about with Restore, just getting the idea out where these resources exist in the community. I think you're muted, Susan. I don't know if you're trying to share.
Yeah, I have an idea. What if you were asked what kinds of things DEP might be able to do to help? What if DEP somehow either created or funded the creation of a generic sticker that could be placed on durable furniture that could have I imagine something with check boxes that could have something about durability, has it been treated, something that all organizations could purchase relatively affordably, something that wouldn't damage the furniture when it's stuck, that could be used to communicate to people about this furniture. Because, yeah.
Kind of like a standardized thing for all of the reuse groups across the.
Absolutely.
Definitely a good idea. It looks like we're about to get kicked out of this group and regain with the rest of the session, but I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for actively participating and sharing your challenges and your ideas and just giving us some ideas and inspiration. So I really appreciate you taking the time to have this discussion with us. And
thank you.
On the other side of this Zoom wall thing. So.
Aaron. All right, it looks like everybody who's going to be back is back. Aaron, where are you? Okay, Aaron, you're going to take it over now?
Forgot it mutes you when you come back in. Hi, everyone. I hope that everyone had really great working group sessions. I know that we did. I'm not supposed to be the note taker, but I took copious amounts of notes because there were so many good ideas and thoughts. But at this point, I just wanted to welcome everybody back and have our note takers share out briefly what they heard in each of the rooms. So why don't we start Well, we'll start with the room I'm in because it's the #1 on the breakout room list that I'm looking at. So Rachel, do you want to give us some highlights?
Sure. So we were the furniture and fixture reuse. Some of the challenge, we had a great group of people, I will say. I was a little late joining, but I also took like 5 pages of notes, so we had great conversation. Some of the challenges, which I think are expected, is the timing of things. You know, when you get things, how fast you can move it. Storage is involved, labor is involved, transportation. It's very expensive to kind of, you know, coordinate all these logistics, and people don't understand that. So, you know, that's a challenge, and COVID has also played into that because more offices are closing. More offices might be transitioning to full remote. Colleges and universities are maybe doing, you know, renovations. So there's a lot of times there's an influx, and then it can be quiet for a while, but there's not a lot of balance. And so that's a challenge for many of these places. Storage, you know, goes hand in hand with that. Let's see. And then, you know, sometimes the perception of used furniture or equipment, you know, how to change that so that people, you know about these places, the marketing of some of these, you know, stores that sell reused furniture and equipment, or companies that do this. It's hard to get people to even, you know, think about them. You know, that's not their first thought. You know, communicating that the pieces are safe. You know, some of the older people talked about, some of the challenges with the older furniture is that they could have chemicals of concern, whether it's brominated flame retardants, formaldehyde, lead paint. You know, those are things that, you know, you need to take into consideration, and could be a game changer for actual safe reuse. And then if it's other equipment, if it's in working order, or, you know, safety, if there's recalls, things like that. With COVID, again, more cleaning and sanitizing, and making sure people feel comfortable with that. So that's a lot of challenges. Some nuggets that I thought were kind of good ideas. Laurel mentioned there's a Finnish company that's doing an RFID tag on furniture that they produce. And so this can help with planning for, you know, companies that work with offices and things that or colleges that are doing a big clean out. If they have an inventory of furniture, they can better plan, like, okay, where they're going to take it, and, you know, get customers in order to facilitate moving that furniture. So that was one idea. More incentives, whether it's from MassDEP or other government, you know, organizations, but something like social capital credits. So if you do things that benefit the community, you know, like keeping this trash, keeping the furniture out of the trash and finding ways to reuse it, you know, is there an incentive that, you know, somebody could get municipal services, you know, like a discount of municipal services, or credits for local businesses, something to kind of incentivize people to make the effort to reuse. Other people, someone else noted that, you know, there's a lot of vacant buildings right now, and is there a way that you could utilize those vacant offices and shopping malls to kind of to store some of this furniture? Because especially the big oversized pieces like queen size beds and sofas, it's really hard to move those, and you know, the space is definitely an issue, but there's a lot of empty space now. And so can we be more strategic about that? And in the future, could communities have like designated warehouses to accumulate these things that people know about and people can utilize? And we talked about leasing models. So you know, furniture leasing instead of, you know, buying. And I think that tends to be a lot of higher end right now, but we said, well, what about college students? You know, a lot of times they only need furniture for 1 year or 2 years. And so they get something maybe at a restore, and then they use it for a year and then they bring it back to that restore? Is there a way to kind of cut that out and so that there's more, leasing model or facilitation of that? I don't know, Erin, did I miss anything?
I think you did a great job recapping that. And I just wanted to add in that I know that some of you at the beginning had expressed interest that maybe there were a couple groups that you had wanted to participate in. When we share out the working group meeting summary at the end, if there's things that like our group didn't get around to discussing, such social barriers or possible solutions or innovative ideas that you had that you wanted to add to the conversation and to our knowledge, please email us and we can include those as well. So yeah, I think that we had as you could just hear from Rachel, we had a really great conversation, but there might be other ideas among everyone else on this call that if you want to contribute, we would love to hear them. At that, I will turn it over to Kathy to share out about the group about electronics.
Thanks, Erin. So I was in the electronics breakout room. There was a lot of great conversation, so I hope I didn't miss anything. But some of the bigger things with barriers, we talked about solar panels, and after the warranty expires, basically the manufacturers want to destroy them rather than reusing them or giving them second life because they're at a lower efficiency. But just because it's at a lower efficiency doesn't mean it can't be used elsewhere. Even a 50% efficient solar panel is still better than nothing. So talking about how to move manufacturers from wanting to destroy the property after to allowing it to be resold to somewhere else, to a different country where it can be reused. Similar issues are in other electronics like laptops, computers, cell phones. Rather than destroying them or throwing them out, give them second life and allow other users to use them. Manufacturers use fair campaigns to say that electronics can't be reused because your data is there and someone else can access it and access your private information. And that's kind of specific to HIPAA laws for health departments, that computers that are used and store patient data the hard drives have to be destroyed instead of just being wiped or trying to use that equipment or sell it for a second life. Manufacturers and computers, software updates stop after a while. So even if you have an older piece of equipment that still works, still charges, that you repaired, or it still works, eventually the manufacturer will stop giving software updates. So it becomes obsolete and you're kind of forced to buy new equipment, and then you can't really, there's no second life for it if you can't use it for what it's primarily being used for. And then we talked about a lot of solutions like adding different language to procurement policies. So adding language that says working equipment can become surplus and sold as surplus property instead of being destroyed or shredded. There was a lot of talk of trying this with state departments, universities, to kind of use the surplus equipment that's not being used with the workers as much to be given somewhere else where it can have a second life. We talked a lot about the right to repair legislation and how important it is for manufacturers to kind of provide the repair manuals and software tools, not just for their own like companies use, but for customers, independent repair professionals. So they have the opportunity to repair what's wrong with it instead of going and having to pay a lot more money or just having to buy a new product because they couldn't repair the old one. Another idea was to require manufacturers to follow the waste hierarchy, to reduce, then reuse, then recycle, but to add in penalties or consequences if they don't follow this and prove that they do. And what else? Someone shared something that's happening in Europe, where France released repairability scoring indexes that assign score based on how repairable the product is. And they're looking to introduce it as an EU-wide policy to have these labels on products that kind of tell customers the durability and the repairability of a product to influence their purchasing decisions. So there's a lot more, but I think that's some of the bigger things. Brooke, if you have anything else to add. Brooke, you're muted.
Thank you. Great job. I wanted just to add that we had a really interesting discussion about solar panels, and California, sort of learned about California and what they're anticipating is a lot that solar panels are being made at what's called builder grade, which means their lifespan is more like 5 to 10 years instead of 10 to 20 years. And so Doug from California Product Stewardship Council, sort of raised the warning flag and said, let California be a lesson. This is a mess. What we're getting is low quality solar panels. And that in Massachusetts, maybe we have an opportunity to try and nip that in the bud by creating procurement regulations, procurement rules that mandate a higher quality and more durability of panels. So that was really interesting. Thank you.
Great, and it sounds like you guys had a amazing discussion. If we can have the textiles group report out, Veronique.
Yes, thanks. So we had a wonderful discussion too. We did have Fred Olson from Planet Aid with us, which was great to have somebody give us a lot of information from the industry perspective. We started off with a lot of statistics, which were interesting. You know, it's about 275,000 tons are actually being thrown away annually. And we were curious about how much do we actually capture then? And Fred was letting us know he thinks it's about 15% of textiles throughout the whole country, but Massachusetts is probably capturing 20 to 25% because we have more of a focus on it. Usually about 80 pounds per person per year is thrown away, which kind of astounded me. So probably about 60,000 tons we are actually currently capturing in Massachusetts. So that was good to know. The challenges that came up, the first one was really about education. A lot of people are so confused about what actually is a textile, what's the definition of a textile, what actually do the companies, what will they accept into their bins or their collections curbside. There was a suggestion for some kind of universal labeling that would make this clearer, and also the suggestion for some kind of umbrella organization or centralized method for getting all this information out to everybody in Massachusetts to make it easier, like kind of a one-stop shopping. So we did mention, of course, Beyond the Bin and Recycling Works. And we spent some time on the household textiles, but then also we had Lenny Freed with us, who gave us an update on what she's doing on the commercial end of things. And that's really important information. There's a huge amount of commercial textiles that are out there that would need to be captured that are currently being disposed of. One interesting thing about the commercial textiles that Lenny deals with this is they tend to be all polyester, and that's actually a challenge for repurposing a lot of that material. Let's see, we talked about drop-off versus curbside collection of textiles and the differences with those, and whether there was more than one vendor doing the curbside collection. And so we have a couple of those links that we can be sharing. I'm trying to think of what else. I have 5 pages of notes too, but it's I'm trying to boil it down. We did get some good news from Fred that since COVID, the recycling of textile, the donations has increased about 100%. So that's really nice to know. And hopefully that trend will continue. A lot of the stuff that they collect is actually sent overseas, at least through Planet Aid, who is with us today. Let me see here. On the commercial end of things, what Lenny's working on, she's been doing this for about 3.5 years. She gathers about 6.25 tons per year, and this is just from one linens company. And it's estimated that there are 90 such companies across the state. So that's a huge amount of tonnage of linens that are out there. She gets about 600 bed sheets every week, which is amazing. So let me see. We also talked about a little bit about transparency from the companies that do take in our textiles about where it's actually going. You know, how much of it gets repurposed or recycled, torn up for rags, or shredded for carpet. And Fred did share with us that about 18% of the donations that come in is actually just trash. Things that people are just kind of getting rid of that they shouldn't be, up to like mattresses and propane tanks. And I mean, we all know, we've seen the bins, and people just kind of take advantage of that and decide they're just going to dump off their stuff. So that's definitely a challenge. Anne, did I miss anything else in there?
Thank you, Veronique. That was great. There was a lot of focus on the need for infrastructure, more infrastructure for textile recycling, as well as the communications, the methodology to get the word out and educate people are both key. And there was support for the ban, and generally all around, and also concern about the need for more infrastructure and to be in place to help make it work. There was also talk about how dumping of mattresses and furniture at Planet Aid bins is happening a lot more than before, and it was Fred's opinion that that's because of convenience and not because of people not knowing that can't be, that shouldn't be, that's not going to be reused. It's just people moving out or whatnot, and they just need a place to take that stuff. So that's a problem that also needs to be worked on. And there's a lot of support for changing our culture from basically throwaway society to a reuse culture. And there was a lot of interest in having a continuing textile work group, both for household material and commercial material. So,
Great, thank you both for sharing out about your group. We will now move on to building materials, and I know both Janine and Kathy were taking notes in this, so I'll let them tag team that however they feel makes the most sense. Janine, Kathy?
Would you like me to start, Janine, or would you like to?
I was going to start, Kathy, but we're first of all, same as everybody, lots of great discussion. I was, while others were talking, I was listening in, but I was also putting stars next to the points that I felt most important to mention, and all of the points in my notes are starred. So it was very, very informative, great discussion. So some of the same concepts, some of the same challenges with the others we heard from, supply and demand. You know, one of the speakers talked about marble mantles, clawfoot tubs, and in the storage of these items is that they get so many, they're wonderful items. And a suggestion of maybe better inventorying and better detailing of some of these materials, the sizes and whatnot would be helpful. The mention of lead paint issue, they have wonderful mantles from pre-1978. Some of the misconceptions are that these lead mantles can be an issue. Warehouse space, storage for materials collected. One speaker mentioned remanufacture of some of these items. We might not necessarily use a marble mantle for its original purpose, but lots of opportunity and utilizing these materials for remanufacturing new items. There was a discussion of the job creation and the difference in the number of jobs created from deconstruction versus demolition. Many more jobs, 20 more jobs for deconstruction than there are for demolition. The Portland, Oregon model was discussed. You know, there was mention of natural disasters. Katrina was mentioned, and many of the buildings were destroyed, and the parts from those buildings were used to fix the historic buildings that may not have been fully destroyed. Then the building efficiency when using older materials. Much of the oldest, there's a misconception that old materials aren't as good, but some of the older structural materials are even better quality and add to the greenness of construction. Tax incentives for reuse were made a suggestion to mandate or provide tax incentives. One speaker just said very eloquently, why is it so inexpensive to dispose of materials? We should incentivize builders to donate and to reconstruct or to use to deconstruct. Somebody mentioned maybe RDP points for some type of building permit sign off where builders commit to donating materials or deconstruction rather than demolition or disposing. Getting through them pretty quick here. Again, the space constraints, storing these materials came up a few times. As far as DEP helping, training, commercial construction training. Oftentimes, timing is of the essence. Contractors, owners, they want to get buildings built. They don't have time to plan the deconstruction, and some don't realize the benefits. So training for carpenters, unions, guidelines for construction. We did provide a link to our C&D webpage. Some of those things can be found on our awesome C&D webpage. Okay, modular homes were talked about, and incentivizing utilization of reclaimed building material in construction of modular homes. DEP could incentivize that kind of requirement. Then there was a very interesting point from David Bennick from the reuse consultant. The price of construction has gone way up, or building materials, I should say, for wood during the pandemic, and they sold out of 2x4s, reclaimed 2x4s during this pandemic, to the point where they cannot provide reclaimed 2x4s for construction. So, Kathy?
That's great, Janine. I think you hit on most of the major points because there was so much good information shared, but I just, to underscore, the supply and demand came up a lot, sort of knowing where to take materials for contractors to know where to bring them. And then also for architects and homeowners to know where to find them. So a lot of it has to do with connecting the dots. And when Janine mentioned the C&D resources on DEP's website, that perhaps information about reuse opportunities could be added to that, in addition to C&D processing if it's not already there, so that folks who go to it would see a variety of opportunities. Definitely underscoring the training. I think there was, I put a few stars next to that myself. Specific training for deconstruction, a residential pilot focusing on residential explicitly, and a pilot was recommended that would really kind of hit a home run, was what was suggested. So to show how to do it and to talk about the cost issues so that it sort of demystifies concerns about cost in doing so. And I loved hearing from Portland, Oregon, that they actually did a deconstruction on live TV. I thought that sounded really awesome, to really just kind of show people. I find that that's such a great tool. And yes, incentives, and then other things that Portland, Oregon did as a city, that they were such a leader that they created incentives, financial incentives for contractors. If they would salvage or and could salvage a deconstruction project and show documentation, they would get a $500 offset that could go to the homeowner or the contractor. And then it built up to $2,500 incentive if you plan to deconstruct. So really some neat things happening on the West Coast that I think we can learn from. So thanks, it was a great group.
Great, thank you both. Sharon, I am sorry, you're gonna have to go really quick. We just had so much other exciting notes about all the other sessions, but Sharon, could you share out about the transportation and distribution packaging discussion real quick? Oh, you're muted.
Losing valuable time here. We were a small but potent group. There were 8 of us. 3 of us were from MassDEP. 1 was from Recycling Works. And then we had Laura, we had Melissa and Marie that were municipal folks that are very active in their communities where they reside or have resided, working on bans and other waste reduction initiatives. We had Paul Benoit from Box Save. His company delivers reusable, durable, and made from recycled content plastic moving containers. He has grown his business from 500 boxes to up to 6,700. His biggest challenge is getting the word out, consumer education. And then our our 8th very valuable participant was Laura Lillienkamp, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. And Laura is with the Western Mass Creative Use Network, and where they are trying to get waste to makers. And their biggest challenge is finding storage space. And I'm going to just kind of jump around. To which Julia's mentioned, why are we looking for more storage? Why aren't we looking for models that are more like a buy nothing or the greater Boston Food Bank, which acts as a hub? And we talked a lot about that, about having a hub where folks can go and find where material is rather than having to store it. But we definitely need storage as well. Laurel talked about Raytheon, how they require suppliers to use reusable shipping containers. And, we talked about, as regards what can the state do? And apparently the state is looking at how they can promote sustainable packaging in their contracts. Maybe a particular vendor might earn more points. But as Melissa and Marie both said, municipalities can be doing the same, as well as businesses, like we heard about Raytheon. Claudine mentioned that we really need to get facilities directors and the folks that are involved in transportation management in their particular companies. Paul said we need moving companies. We also should have Amazon in the room, and WB Mason was mentioned because they're a large supplier to municipalities. Laura, they're looking for election signs. They are repurposing election signs. They're having challenges with finding reuse options for those plastic bags that contain pellets or grain, birdseed bags. And we talked about just what are the tools that are available right now. We talked about Recycle Smart, which was great, and also Beyond the Bin, and Recycling Works for communities. And I'm just looking over my notes. Oh, actually, Paul gave us, he gets his containers from Reusable Transport out of Florida. And as I said, they contain recycled content, and they will also take back broken containers. So we really want to have more models like that. So despite the fact we're a small group, I think there was a lot of really great info, and hopefully for our next meeting, we'll get some more interested parties and vested parties in on this conversation, because it's really important. I don't know, Claudine or anybody else, if you have anything to add.
Yeah.
Sorry, we're already at 12 o'clock. Okay. So what I'm going to say is that I definitely want Claudine to add to, especially in the meeting notes, if there's anything wasn't captured or anybody notices that there was an idea that they shared wasn't captured, to do it then. But I want to be respectful of people's time, and I had wanted to share out. Can you guys see the slides that I'm sharing? In the invite to this meeting, I had, you guys see what I'm, sorry, I can't tell.
Yep. Yes,
yeah.
It's up.
Okay. There, in the meeting invite, I had mentioned that we have a last call for a grant project. So if anyone has inspired from great ideas that they talked about in this discussion and they really wanted to bring a project to life, submit a micro grant to get some funding for that, just email me if you want more information. And then the next meeting will be January 27th, where we can continue these conversations. We're mainly going to be talking about how we're going to move the reduce and reuse action plan forward at that point in terms of the methodology, the outline, and the prioritization tools to decide which things we will take action on. So don't miss that. And then lastly, I just wanted to note that this link will be sent out, but we do have a directory of everyone who's participated in these reduce and reuse working groups and a listserv. So if you want to connect with anyone that you met today out of this meeting, or just share ideas or share things in between meetings, please utilize these networking tools. And if there is anybody who does not want to be added to this list, please let me know so that I don't add you to a list that you don't want to be added to. With that, I really appreciate everyone's time and everyone's good ideas and everyone's thoughts. And we will send out meeting summary notes soon. And just thank you for being here and have a great rest of your day and happy holidays and happy new year. Okay, with that, we are done.
Thanks, Erin.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great job.
So